Helen, we reviewed a movie and ruined the lives of everyone it knew. Let's talk about I Know What You Did Last Summer.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We are back, the Eye of the Storm podcast. Daniel, do you want to let the people know what we're here to discuss today?
So this is Have You Seen, in which we talk about a movie that some of us know well and others have just seen for the first time. This week, we are talking about I Know What You Did Last Summer, which is a 1997 slasher movie, which follows the story of four teenagers who, in the middle of the night, hit somebody with their car, believe that he is dead, dispose of the body, and then kind of go on living their lives. And a year later, somebody begins stalking them and starts killing them one by one. And they are getting threatening messages that indicate that whoever is after them knows what they did last summer and is here to take revenge. So I Know What You Did Last Summer is kind of a classic 90s slasher movie where in the 80s you kind of had these kind of grungy, low budget slasher movies with no-name actors, and it was all very cheap and very basic in its production in many cases. And in the 90s, following kind of the coattails of Scream, you had a whole bunch of slasher movies that were much glossier, much higher production value, and tended to have young, up-and-coming, but well-known actors. And I Know What You Did Last Summer was one of them. Growing up, this was definitely part of the standard movie rotation. When you turned on the TV on a Saturday night, like on German TV back in like 2002 or whatever, there was a decent chance that I Know What You Did Last Summer or a movie like it was on. So I kind of passively grew up with this, but never really knew it all that well. And I've got a whole thing about slasher movies where I like the idea more than the actual movies. And this is kind of one of them where whenever I think about this movie, even though I've seen it a bunch of times, I will always kind of know the first scene where they hit the guy on the road and the last scene, which is the big fight on the boat. And everything in between is kind of a blur. So for whatever reason, this movie never quite stuck with me, even though when I watched it, I kind of like it. And I instantly recognize it when somebody mentions it or I see like a scene or a screen grab from it. So since a new one is coming out that is, as far as I know, more or less a direct continuation of this one and the second one, which is a whole separate story unto itself. We thought we'd talk about this movie and just see, does it hold up? What is it like to see it for the first time in 2025? So, Herbie, you just saw it for the first time, right?
Yeah, I don't know how I haven't seen it, but this is definitely the first time seeing it yet.
So what were your impressions seeing it for the first time?
So this movie was good until it wasn't. And I like the idea of it. So these group of teenagers that on this particular night were involved in a car accident and then made it worse because a person hadn't died, but they didn't know that, and eventually drowned, etc. A year later, they're being tormented for it and they're being haunted by their past. The effects that it had on each of the teenagers as well, you can kind of see how that particular night had a lasting impact on them. One year on, which I enjoyed. The whole mystery around trying to guess who is tormenting them was interesting. I think there was like a few obvious red herrings that they threw in there, which were there to try and keep you guessing, but were obviously not those people. So like Mark, for example, because he showed up on that particular night and he drove past and, you know, happened to be one of the only people that we saw on that particular night, was an obvious red herring that, okay, that's going to be the first person that they question. Actually wasn't even clear why he died in this movie. It doesn't make sense why he was killed by the guy with the hook. I don't know if he had an official name in this, but the man with the hook is what they were kind of referring him to.
They're calling him the fisherman. And I think you're talking about Max, right? I think you said Mark. You mean
Max, yeah.
the creepy guy who kind of sticks his nose into everything and is the first to die?
Yeah, exactly. Max, again, I don't know why he was killed, because he had nothing to do with the murder. He just happened to drive by. So that one didn't completely make sense to me in the movie. But after the mystery and after we were kind of, you know, starting to unravel a little bit more, I was kind of getting a bit annoyed with the kills and how it was playing out. And not the kills himself, it was just the screaming. It was just a constant screaming and panic from everyone. And it was just doing my head in. And it was like literally every occasion they had to make one of the victims scream, they scream. So like they open something, they scream. They turn a corner, they scream. And I'm like, Jesus, please, like you're hurting my ear. Like you're hurting my ear with this. So I think overall, it's an interesting movie. I don't think it does anything spectacular. I wouldn't say it's even one of the best slashers that I've seen personally, but it's good enough and it's like nostalgic enough as well. It's like anytime we review any of these movies from around this time period, it always gives a nice nostalgic feel because it makes me remember other movies I've seen in and around that time. And of course, we did do Scary Movie, and it had a few like direct rip-off scenes from this movie as well. So it was like a nice callback to that as well. So I think I definitely appreciated it for that as well. But for me, it was pretty standard and not remarkable, but just okay, I would say.
Yeah, I think that's interesting that I've seen the movie a bunch of times, but never really got into it. And you had never seen the movie, and yet we're both nostalgic for it. Or as we watch it, it evokes nostalgic feelings, which is kind of strange, right? And I think it just feels 90s. Just like you know these people, you know the look, you know the fashion, whatever, how people talk. It just feels 90s, and to me at least, it feels more like a vibe than anything else. Where this is just like when I picture like a 90s slasher movie, 90s teen movie, whatever, like teen slasher movie. This is what I picture, more so than Scream, really. And it's strange. Maybe it just uses the formula really well. I don't know. And maybe it's because like I know these actors from various things I've seen in other things. It's a really weird sensation.
Yeah, definitely. Again, with Max as well, I think that's why I remember him so clearly because I grew up watching The Big Bang Theory and obviously he's one of the prominent characters in there. So just seeing him in that instantly attracted me to not his character per se, but it just made me fall into the movie easier than I would have if I didn't know the characters or if I wasn't familiar with the settings as well. But I'm curious to know on your side because I don't think this is like I don't think they handle the mystery of this really well because for me it was obvious it wasn't Max, and then they purposely leave out Ray a lot in this movie, and they have like this whole like mystery around his dad and his dad passing away, and obviously he was working as a fisherman as well, so they kind of try to point you in that direction. But I never really fell for it at all in this movie. I never really thought that he was actually going to be the guy. It was always a subversion. And that might just be from knowing these type of movies. And again, maybe if you watched it back then, you might have fallen for it a little bit more, and you might have believed that it might have been him in this movie. But then the reveal of it being the girl's dad who was killed previously by the guy that they thought that they killed because he killed her or whatever like that, it kind of gets a little bit complicated, how, the chain of events of how things plays out. But the reveal of it being him makes sense, but it was also underwhelming because I don't know if it is an official rule in the movie, but you are meant to see the killer, or you're meant to like have seen the killer in the movie, or like have come across them or something. So for it to be him kind of came out of left field, but then again, they didn't really set it up to be anyone else, or they didn't set it up well enough for it to be anyone else in this movie. So I was always expecting it to be just some like random character. I don't think I enjoyed that reveal. I don't think I enjoyed it being someone that we wasn't aware of or someone that we didn't know. And maybe we could have had a few more characters in here just to add to, the red herrings and just to add to that element of, oh, we've come across this killer and maybe we overlooked this person and actually it's this person for this particular reason. I think would have hit better for me.
Yeah, it's a strange one where, as I was watching this, I was thinking about angles, right? Like things to bring up. One of the things that I quite like about this movie is that the protagonists have a lot more agency than they often do in slashers, right? Like in most slashers, they're kind of always scared, running away, trying to convince people, or like they are reacting to the threat, but they're not actively doing stuff, right? And here they are actively doing things. Julie specifically very quickly starts the investigation and starts actively tracking down like who it was that they presumably killed and who might be coming after them, on the logic that it's probably somebody who knew the guy and that person is now out for revenge or something like that, right? Like that's the initial idea. I don't know, like off the top, like there must be some, but off the top of my head, I don't know any other slasher movies where protagonists or the victims have this much agency, right? They kind of stumble into a situation and then they realize they're being hunted and then they just start screaming and running. And that's the last 45 minutes of the movie. And while there's plenty of this here, there's also a lot of actively going after the mystery, right? It makes it even weirder that the mystery is so lame. Because in the end, it's just the guy, right? Like your first thing is, okay, the guy must have survived, and now he's coming after them, right? Because who else would it be? Like, was that your first thought? Like,
I just didn't know, to be honest. Like I had no clue. And again, for me, it was more the movie's pointing me to these people, so I know it's not them. And my one suspicion was if it was like that rich blonde guy, the one that was a bit more intense, the one that he was part of the group, but it was a little bit more intense. And I thought maybe that experience of killing that person may have, because like he was the one that was like trying to show that he was like the most normal and most unaffected by it. So I thought it might have been like some type of trauma response to that, and him knowing that that girl was coming back to then start to, I don't know, I was like trying to like piece together something, but I didn't really have any other, I don't know, ideas who it could be.
but your first assumption wasn't, oh, the guy survived and now he's coming after them.
It did cross my mind. It did cross my mind at one point. And I wonder, because like you said that you watched this back a few times now, but obviously you don't remember it. You don't remember really what happened in between. But I wonder if there's enough evidence in there to show that actually it was the girl's father. Because I think all good mysteries should have enough clues in there so that when you rewatch it, you can be like, oh, I missed this, and like, okay, this makes sense, and like adds a little bit more context on the second watch. So I don't know if there's things in there that make it obvious that it's that girl that passed away's dad that was the killer and was the fisherman.
Yeah, so this might be the part where we kind of annoy the people who really are into this movie and really know it, because I've never really engaged with the movie like really dug into it. But my feeling is that it's not a proper mystery. That it's kind of, there's a whole bunch of clues and for like dead ends and red herrings and whatever. But in the end, it's just the guy, and there is no real twist to it. There's no real big mystery to it. You're not meant to figure it out. You're meant to kind of wonder and kind of be engaged in the mystery, but you're not supposed to actually figure it out. And I don't think the movie gives you that many clues. I don't think it's like it's a puzzle in that way. It just doesn't seem like it, because there's a lot of revealing little details about Ben Willis, the fisherman, and his life and his background and whatever else. But there's not like, I don't feel like there are real clues where you can really piece it together halfway into the movie and say, aha, I know who it is, and then if you rewatch it again, it all makes sense. I've never, like, even having seen this movie a few times, I've never really got that sense that it's meant to be figured out. I think it's mostly supposed to work on the level of vibes, right? Like, it's supposed to feel creepy. You're supposed to feel for the main characters, but you're not meant to engage with it intellectually, I don't think. That's kind of my reading of it. And maybe if somebody really knows this movie and it's their favorite thing and they know all the details, maybe that person is kind of face palming right now. But like the movie never really convinced me that the clues were real clues. That's kind of just my take. What I think we are meant to do is engage with it like on a thematic level, where there's a whole bunch of different ideas going on here that are kind of inform. Like, it's not really about who is the murderer. It's more about different ideas kind of not really being explored but kind of touched on. So one of them is trust, right? Like, throughout the movie, people are constantly talking about trust, trusting in the wrong people, not being able to trust, that sort of thing. So the friends all trust each other, and that is kind of thrown into question when they start accusing each other. They don't trust in the system, right? Because they are in fact innocent, but they don't trust that the system will care and that the system will be fair. When Barry is killed by the fisherman, kind of during the beauty pageant, and Helen kind of tries to draw attention to it, nobody believes her. And when she tries to get the police officer to investigate, he doesn't take her seriously. And when he doesn't find anything, he kind of chastises her for pranking him. So again, there's no trust here, and the people you're supposed to be able to trust like are not available. And then when the cop drives her home, the fisherman kind of stops the car, pretending to have car trouble. And again, the police officer trusts like in his own authority, and he trusts that somebody is who they appear to be, and then he ends up dying as a result, right? Because the fisherman kills him as he kind of tries to help with the car trouble. So there's constantly trust going on here, like the topic of trust and misplaced trust and not being able to trust in somebody you should be able to trust and all of that. Did you pick up on that?
I think indirectly, yes, because again, like I definitely recognize all of those elements in the movie. And there was that feeling, again, especially with the police officer when he was approaching the fisherman when he was having car troubles, I definitely felt that, okay, this police officer is definitely underestimating this person just because of who they are and because they work in law enforcement. So I did feel it. I did pick up on it. My question would be, what was the overall message? If it's a theme and it's a constant theme throughout the movie, what's the overarching message that we're meant to pull from it, or is it just meant to be in those individual moments of like not being able to trust an authority or being able to trust the ones that are closest to us and things like that?
Yeah, I don't know that there's necessarily a message here, right? It's not as simple as, oh, you should have, like, either like society is broken because nobody can trust each other, or like you should just trust in your friends, or you should trust in people you know. You could imagine that the movie goes to one of these places, or
I found
multiple.
one more. I found one more example. Is the fisherman's mistrust in the police as well, and I think that's why he killed the police officer without caring, because again, his daughter died, but then the guy got off with it, got away with it. So then again, that's like the whole not trusting the system and taking things into his own hands, which is then why he then goes out and starts killing people and has no problem killing the police as well. So that's another area of mistrust. I just want to kind of throw that out there because that came into my mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so this entire story is infused with the idea of trust, right? Which is interesting, but I'm not sure that it kind of culminates in a message, which actually is kind of refreshing. Like I'm totally okay with a movie just kind of presenting a topic and then you kind of make up your own mind about specific things, right? There doesn't necessarily have to be a message. And I've said this before, that like a movie aimed at adults should not have a message; it should have ideas. And it seems like this does that, right? Like it does not simply have a simplistic message of trust or don't trust or whatever it might be. It's more like, hey, let's approach this topic from like 6 different angles and then see what comes out and how you respond to it. So one of the questions it asks, right, without telling you the answer, is should they have gone to the police? Should they have reported the accident?
Is that for me to answer?
Well, it's like the movie asks you this, right?
Mm-hmm. It's a difficult one. It's a difficult one, especially when you. I mean, of course, the right thing is to always, own up to your mistakes and go to the police. Is what you would think is the right thing to do in society. But again, you then think of it from their perspective. They're just graduated high school or whatever it is, about to go off to college, have these big dreams. I can't remember the name of the girl who wants to go to New York and become a famous actor and stuff like that. And then before you know it, like your life's completely flipped and gone to shit. And it's like, okay, what do you do in that situation? You kind of have to just question your own morality in that situation in terms of what you would do, because some people choose self-preservation over anything else, and other people would see that they made a mistake and they need to own up to it, and whatever happens, they they will sort of deal with it. So it's a question of your own personal morality and how you view it, what situation you find yourself in as well, because again, everyone's approach to it would be different and unique. So in this situation, there were a bunch of teens that had their lives in front of them. We spoke about juror number 2 off camera, but in that situation, he was having a baby. And for anyone that hasn't watched the movie, it's just about a juror that thought he hit a deer, and it's actually a similar situation to this movie. Actually, thought he hit a deer, but actually run over a girl and killed her, and then gets called up to jury service for the murder that he actually committed. And then he is then tasked with
with somebody else being charged for it, which who he knows is innocent because he's the one who did it.
So then he's then tasked with questioning his morality and choosing what he does in that situation. But yeah, just kind of like bringing it back to this, it's like everyone would be
just quickly. Like before we move on, yeah. So it's a very similar idea, right? Like morally, in a vacuum, it's clear what the correct thing to do is, right? You come clean, you report it because you have not done nothing wrong, right? Like yes, you caused an accident, but it was an accident. But what if the system punishes you for doing the right thing? What if the police needs to pin this on and you're the only option? Like there's nobody else around. And what if that ruins your life? Like who benefits from that, right? Like the guy's already dead. Like you didn't intend it. It's tragic, but it's done. And why should you add to the damage, right? Like that is a real question. It's not about morality necessarily, but it's more about what would you do? And like the basic impulse of it is the same between the two movies, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. And again, it kind of goes back to as well like that like you mentioned, that self-preservation of these things already happened. It was something that you didn't intend to cause. Do you make the situation worse? And if you make the situation worse, how does that impact not just your life but the people around you as well? What does that mean for everyone around you? So yeah, I think it's just a question that everyone would have a different answer to, if like depending on if they were in that situation, depending on how they view the movie and how they kind of view their own life.
Yeah, and that also kind of ties into like a secondary theme, which is that of class, right? Because we are meant to sympathize with these four teenagers, and they're not especially rich, right? But they are kind of middle class. We're kind of meant to kind of relate to them, right, as the audience. And certainly they are like by 90s, like this has changed now, but in the 90s, like this is what like this is who the protagonist was, right? So we are meant to kind of believe that like they have this great future ahead of them and this will ruin it, and so that's a reason to not go forward with it, right? And to hide the death. And then this idea of class is kind of expanded on when it turns out that one of them is kind of working class. Ray ends up being a fisherman, right? So he is more like the victim, right, than the other three in the end. Like a year later, when they've all gone to college, Ray has not gone to college. He's actually started working, right? Helen, I think, also didn't like is planning to become an actress, right? And is it New York or is it Los Angeles? Yeah. So, but like they all have big plans, right? I think Barry is the one who's actually wealthy, but Julie goes off to college. Helen wants to become an actress, and like there's a class difference between them. That kind of there's a subtext that this was not a big deal while they were in school, but now that they're adults and they're going off to live their own lives and go on their own trajectories, now that is creating a rift between them, and that is reflected in the three kind of being on one side and Ray kind of being on another side, right? Like when as they kind of deal with the fear of being stalked by this killer, they're not all together. They segregate kind of into like on a class basis, right? And they accuse Ray of somehow, like, first of all, there's the scene where they've all been threatened in some way and he just got an angry letter, and one of them says, hey, how is that fair? Why are you not getting the same kinds of threats? And then later on, when it turns out that he has become a fisherman, they immediately suspect him, right? Because he is not like them exactly, right? So like this whole idea that this kind of class situation kind of informs who trusts who and how people view each other and what they assume about each other. That's all in this movie, right? And that goes so far as the fisherman who, first of all, his persona as the slasher villain is that of like a working class kind of person, right? He's not like them, right? And also when they hit him, he's just some guy, whereas they are the the pretty well-off teens who have been celebrating because they're heading into this amazing future. So all of that is there, and the movie is certainly commenting on all of these topics without necessarily telling you what to think, right? It's not very heavy-handed, right? There's like moments where characters say what they think, and that kind of informs kind of the treatment of these topics. But the movie never really stops to just outright tell you what you as the viewer are meant to think.
Do you know? I feel like not Ray, the other guy, the one that came from the rich family was.
Barry.
I mean, he was definitely portrayed more negatively than what Ray was in this movie. Like he was more like obnoxious, more rude, more sort of arrogant, more kind of just like flippant of everything, pretty much. And there was a comment that he made. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was after the crash at the start of the movie. He made a comment to Ray about where he was from and about kind of not being like them or something like that. I can't remember exactly what the comment was, but I definitely feel like there was on the male side of things, anyways, a clear distinction as to how they were portrayed and how they were how they came across in the movie. On the female side of things, I don't think it was like as clear, or it wasn't as obvious. But then again, I don't think there was like too much of a difference between them in terms of like class or whatever. And I wouldn't necessarily say on Julie's part she treated him badly because of class. That I kind of assumed it was just because of him being her ex and her kind of wanting to disassociate from everything that happened on that night. So she just naturally pulls away. and you can even kind of see that she didn't feel protected by him as well. Like after the richer guy, I can't remember his name, but after he kind of like chokes her out to like after he's like getting them to like promise that they won't say anything, kind of like chokes her out, and then she kind of like looks at him. It's like, you didn't do anything. You didn't step in to like save me or anything like that. And maybe he felt he couldn't just because again of like the class difference, and maybe because of the different backgrounds that they had, and maybe he just had that inferiority complex to him. But I don't know. It definitely felt to me, anyways, that there was a clear difference in portrayal, at least, as to the rich guys being more obnoxious, more loud and flippant or whatever, compared to Ray.
Barry is definitely more willing to throw other people under the bus because he has more to lose, right? But I think it's less about what people actually believe about each other and more like a sense of not being the same, right? Like there's just like a sense of distance between Ray and the others. And also when Julie and Helen go to see Missy, like in the kind of in the sticks, right? Like she's kind of clearly poorer than them, and she's kind of the country person, and she's portrayed as kind of different to them, and she's portrayed as being scarier and more threatening than other people, right? Like there's a scene where I think it's after they visit her for the first time, and then they kind of go back, and I think they told a lie about waiting for AA or something like that, right? Is it AA? AAA? I don't know. There's this Family Guy. There's this Family Guy sketch about somebody needing AAA in Canada, and it gets very confusing because they don't see the difference between AAA and AAA. It's a whole thing. Anyway, I think it's AAA, right? Like the people you get when your car breaks down, right? We're not American. Like I think we're too European to really get this stuff straight. But point is, they lie to her, and then she catches up to them and taps on the window, and for a minute they're afraid that she caught them in the lie, right? But actually they just forgot something and she brought it after them or something like that, right? But in that entire exchange or sequence, I do feel like Missy is portrayed as kind of creepy and threatening, and she doesn't really do very much to justify it. She's just different because she's from a different background than them. Or is that just me?
No, because I definitely get what you're saying, because I definitely feel like she came across like that. But is it because that we're there with the protagonist and we know that they're in the line? We know that they've actually killed her brother, so that it makes that scene a little bit more tense and it puts you on a little bit more of an edge because you're there with the protagonist, as opposed to it being about class. Because I feel like for the movie, anyways, you couldn't approach that scene and not make Missy or not make the audience feel uncomfortable about them being around Missy, knowing that they killed her brother, pretty much. So that's my only pushback on it, is that it needed to feel like that because we're on that ride with Julie and Helen. Yeah.
I agree with you, but like I do think there's a creepy vibe to it, and a large part of this is that we have seen other horror movies where if you go to the creepy country people, like they're like cannibals or something like that, right? Like it's like you expect something to happen. I don't know, maybe she's hiding the brother and they go after anybody who steps on their property or something. Now, you know what I mean? Like if you're seeing the movie for the first time, I think you expect something bad to happen when they go to Missy's house. It certainly rhymes with this whole idea of this person is different from us socioeconomically, therefore she's not like us, and therefore she's in some way a threat. Like that idea is in there, and the movie kind of communicates this idea to the audience, and we're meant to kind of judge Missy for reasons we don't quite articulate, and like that, like I do think that's in there. And then another aspect of this whole thing is when Helen kind of starts working in her family business, and it's not what she expected to do, and it's starting to feel like she's about to be stuck. She's not going to move to New York, she's not going to become an actress. She's like she peaked at 18 when she won this beauty pageant, and for the rest of her life she's going to stock shelves in the family business in a small seaside town. That has a class aspect to it as well, right? Where she thinks she is destined for better things, and it's beginning to dawn on her that it might not, right? So all of these things are here. Like I said, I don't think there's necessarily a strong message here. It's more about we are meant to, like the movie nudges us to think in these categories, and the characters think in these categories, and we are led to make assumptions about characters on the basis of those categories, which actually I think is kind of interesting.
I was gonna say, I think where I see it the most was, again, it was just after the initial accident, and Ray says his reasoning for not wanting to go to the police was, because they had rich parents that would be able to solve the situation for him for them. And he was saying he didn't come for money, so that he would be screwed by the system if he ended up going to the police, pretty much. And I think that was, for me anyways, that one like sticks out as like when you were like mentioning about class as like one of the most obvious ones of like, you know, again, accountability and owning up for your actions and being able to, you know, buy your way out of certain situations. Whereas he was pretty much, there's no out for me. Like there's no one I can give money to. There's no one I can bribe to go easier on me in this situation. It's, you know, you are at the mercy of the system. It's actually poignant that he was the driver as well in that situation, because again, they can all turn around and blame it on him and be like he was the one that was actually driving the car, and then they would then throw the book at him, and then everyone gets away scot free. Not scot free, but everyone else gets away with maybe a little bit more of a slap on the wrist because they've got people into, you know, the right places that can influence things for them. Where he was very much aware that if they go to the police and if they go through the system, that the odds were very much stacked against him for that particular reason, that he didn't come from money.
Yeah, it's definitely going to go very differently for him, right? The other, like, at least Barry can, you know, call his parents and maybe get a fancy lawyer, and maybe the police is not going to assume that Julie or Helen were driving, and that leaves kind of Ray. And he would have to gamble his entire future on the police trusting him that he's telling the truth when he says he wasn't drinking. So it all kind of like it's all kind of marinated in these two ideas of trust and class, and the interaction of these two things. It's kind of funny. Like on the one hand, like I have like three opinions about this movie at this point. One is this is kind of like the quintessential slasher. It just feels like a slasher. It feels like a 90s teen horror movie. And it's not that great because I'm kind of zoned out for much of it. And like the mystery is kind of just filling time, and ultimately the beginning and the end kind of come together, and that's the story, and everything in between is kind of part misdirection, part filling time. And then my third opinion is this is actually really deep thematically, and actually quite well done, and there's actually quite a bit to it. And I'm not sure which of those three dominates. It's kind of like depends on what mood I'm in, which of those three I care about more. But I wouldn't say one totally dominates the other two, or one is irrelevant or something. And like this is kind of the bottom line of this movie. And it seems like I'm not alone in this, because I'm looking at Rotten Tomatoes here. It's got 48% critics, 41% audience, but it made $125 million on a $17 million budget. So that's something like a 7 times multiplier. So this made a whole bunch of money, spawned its third sequel, is in the works and is about to release. And there was a like one season of a series on Amazon. So it is successful, but nobody really likes it, or like people on like there's no consensus on it. So it's kind of interesting.
I was gonna say what's weird as well is it's got so much cultural relevance as well, because it's one that everyone just knows. So even though I hadn't seen the movie, I'd heard it referenced in many different things, whether it's in music or whether it's in other TV shows or movies or things like that. It's just one that you always are aware of from that particular genre. Anyways, it's just, I don't know, holds such a. I'm actually surprised by the Rotten Tomatoes for that reason, actually, just because it has so much cultural value and holds so much cultural relevancy. Even still to this day, I would say it's like, you know, you say that to someone, you say, I know what you did last summer, they immediately know that you're referring to a particular movie. So it's interesting to see the reaction to it. But I think for me, how I view it, or how it sits with me, is that it's the second one that you said, where it's what was the second one that you said again? I just kind of refresh me on that one.
It's got a good beginning, a good ending, and then a good 90 minutes, 80 minutes of filler in the middle.
Okay, I don't think I would even say, because I actually don't think I like the ending of this at all.
It's not amazing, right? But it's like a solid ending to a slasher movie, right? Like it's fine. I'm just saying, if you cut out the 75, 80 minutes in the middle, you would have a pretty good short film.
I actually agree with that. I actually think it'd really work as a short, intense horror film, actually, because for me, it's just like everything in between isn't great. And I know you mentioned about how this is one of the ones where they're actually proactive in this, and they're actually doing some investigating and actually trying to uncover what's going on. And all of that I liked, actually, even though it's not executed completely well. So like even when they go to see the country girl at her house, it didn't play out in a realistic way for me, just based on the questions that they were asking, the way that they were asking the questions. It all just felt too obvious that they were trying to get information out of her, as opposed to it coming out in like a natural conversation, or in a way that they were able to elicit the information out of her without the script just allowing them to do so. Even by the end of it, like, oh, your car's just working. What happened to AA? I thought you called AA, and you're asking about this person called Billy, and you're like repeating the question so many times and whatever like that, and you're just making a whole show of it, pretty much. So I think where I find it interesting is the idea of it over anything. It's the idea of something's happened, somehow someone knows of what you did. And do you know what? I actually do like it that it's tied to someone else was out there committing a murder, or someone else was out there like doing something nefarious, and then you happen to fall in the middle of it, and then they're coming back to torment you. And because it's linked to the way that his daughter died, it does make sense, and it is relatable, because he just sees them as more part of the problem, or part of the reason why he lost his daughter in the first place, because it's just like these reckless teens that are always like out drinking and, you know, don't have no care or anything. So everything around it, all of the ideas, all of the concepts of the movie, I really enjoy. It's just the execution, end of the mystery, just don't feel satisfying enough for me, unfortunately.
My problem is that the resolution is kind of obvious, right? It's just the guy, right? Like I've said. And the mystery, like each of the individual steps makes sense. I don't think there's a point in which you have to kind of just throw your hands up in the air and say, oh, this is just whatever. Let's just wait 20 minutes and then the plot makes sense again. I think the pieces all make sense. I don't know that there is much there in terms of the revelation. Like, I don't feel like the investigation changes the outcome, because the fisherman was coming after them anyway, and them knowing who he is does not change that. And them knowing who he is does not give them additional tools to defeat him. It does not change how they react to him. Like, they're not trying to negotiate with him, really. You know what I mean? It's like an investigation happens, and which is essentially just exposition. It just simply explains to us who the guy is. And then he shows up to start his killing, and at that point, it's a standard slasher again. That's kind of my problem with it. Like I said in the beginning, that the middle part just does not stick in my brain. I do not remember it. It's fine as I'm watching it, but it does not stick. Ask me in a week what happens in the middle part of I Know What You Did Last Summer, I will not be able to tell you. It has no staying power, and the reason it doesn't, I think, is pretty simple, which is that it does not change the plot, and there's no ramifications to anything they uncover, I don't think. So for that reason, I have to ask, why do it? Like, why spend so much time on something that doesn't matter? And now we do get some bits and pieces here and there where we learn a little bit more about these characters and where they're coming from and what they want and how they kind of relate to the world, right? The fact that Julie is almost dropping out of university because she simply cannot move on because of her guilt, and that Barry has no such problem, and that Helen has been keeping busy with other stuff, but she's also not terribly cool with it. Like, we learn stuff about these characters in the course of the plot, but the plot itself, I don't think, contributes very much, and that is why I said you could cut it, and the movie would still work, but it would just be 20 minutes long.
I'm still confused about the fisherman as well, in terms of why he was just killing everyone, and why he let certain people get away, and why he was playing these games. Because, like, again, Max died for no reason whatsoever. Like, there was no reason for Max to die at all, and I don't even know how we would have seen Max in that situation, or whatever. I don't know why he decided to go after Max at all. And then why he was not toying with Barry, but let him get away when he could have killed him after like running him over in the car. Didn't make sense, just because he was going to kill him again later anyway. So it just felt like it was just movie doing movie and adding a bit of like fear and, you know, keeping them alive for just like a later kill.
It does seem like it, right? And some of the kills that are not the main cast seem to be more about, you know, our slasher movie needs more slashing, and our movie needs more plot, so we're gonna put some in. But it does not feel like it's kind of in Scream. We kind of had a similar thing. Like, half the kills are not related to going after Sidney Prescott, right? And not all of them are just people who got in the way. Like, sometimes Ghostface just kills people because it will make for a cool scene, and not necessarily because there's a reason for him to target that person in particular, right? And I think there's a little bit of that here as well.
For his whole gimmick being the fisherman and having the hook, because I know that they tell the campfire story of this killer that broke out of prison. I can't remember exactly how the story goes, but they tell the story about a man with a hook that goes around killing people. But it's not clear that that relates to the actual fisherman in this movie where he actually is the serial killer, because it seems like he's only just started killing people or was going to kill people the year before because his daughter died and he went to go kill the Dan guy because of his daughter. So it doesn't make sense why he adopts that gimmick in this particular movie.
Yeah, it's because the person who wrote this thinks the urban legend of the hook killer is cool. Honestly, I think that's why. The Wikipedia page references it directly. So, like Kevin Williamson, the writer of the screenplay, kind of has probably talked about this. And it gets referenced in the movie, right? Like there's this big exposition scene where they talk by the campfire, like you said, and they mention the hook killer, right? And then that is actually what happens. And yeah, I don't know that it really means very much. It seems a bit like, yeah, this is cool and we're going to put this in. And kind of the story is on people's minds. And like the 90s was a little bit the time of kind of like moral panics, like stranger danger and stuff like this. So people were talking about keeping the kids safe and stuff like that. And urban legends like this kind of tied into that a little bit. And so it was just on people's minds. And I think that is, I think, also part of why the slasher genre kind of was so popular in that time, is because like the anonymous killer, like the anonymous stranger who will just show up and go after your children, is just a thing that was in the zeitgeist at the time. I don't think it really is today. So I don't know. It's maybe there's somebody out there who really knows the story and has really figured this out, but like on its face, I don't see the connection, other than he is a fisherman and therefore he wears fisherman outfits. What else does he have available, right? And the hook is an easy way to kill somebody, and it's a cool visual and all of that seems like that surface level seems to be the actual explanation.
Also, it doesn't seem like there's any panic in the town that people are dying or people are going missing. Like it just seems like everything's business as usual everywhere else. Even though by the time we get to his boat, there's quite a number of people that have died and are on ice in that particular location, but it doesn't seem to affect the town at all.
Yeah, you would think there might be curfews or more police around or whatever, or the FBI is showing up. None of that, right? Another part where it's really style over substance is the ending, which is like after the hook killer has been killed, has been apprehended. Julie is back at university, right? And she is thriving, right? She's like where she was almost flunking out in the beginning. Now she, is really doing well. And then another hook killer shows up. He threatens her by sending her a message like the first hook killer. Then he kind of bursts through the like the glass door, right, of the dorm shower or something like that. And then the movie ends. Did you pick up on a point?
Not at all. I mean, setting up a sequel. That's all I can think of.
Setting up a sequel, yeah, but like, does it say anything about the point of the movie? Like, is this like a Michael Myers thing where the guy is just immortal and he will just always keep coming? Is it a different guy who's now out for revenge? You know what I mean? Like, it feels like it's purely based on vibes, right? Like when you just watch it and don't think about it, it looks really cool. And it's like, oh, this will never be over. Like this guy will always keep coming, but he was stopped, right? Like it should be over. Maybe somebody else has put on the costume like for second degree revenge or something like this, but that's not the story. And then the movie ends just as the new killer shows up. And this is not really like the plot of the second movie. Second movie is something different altogether. There's a whole bunch of stuff in this movie where it's vibes and aesthetics and feels over logic. I think that is where the 48% rating comes from, which is this feels really cool as you're watching it, but then it's really unsatisfying as you try to engage with it and try to think about it, about what happened and what it means. But then at the same time, there's all this very deliberate symbolism and thematic underpinning, like all the stuff we talked about. So it's just this weird mix where some of it is quite superficial and some of it is pretty solid, but it can't pick a lane.
Exactly. That's kind of how the movie hit me as well. Is that you're just kind of like in there hoping that there's more. You're in there hoping that you're gonna get a little bit more out of the movie. And I think I kind of understand it now. The Rotten Tomatoes is you're just kind of left feeling underwhelmed or just not fulfilled.
I feel frustrated because it's like I want to like this. This looks exactly like the kind of thing I would want to like, but somehow the movie won't let me, or it won't meet me halfway. So to wrap this up, you just saw the first movie for the first time. There's 2 more movies, and the next one is coming out next week. Does this make you want to watch I Still Know What You Did Last Summer, which is the next one?
Is it the same characters? Are we getting the same characters back, or are we getting different casts?
Different characters.
So,
but like did this movie make you want more?
I think for sure. Again, it's the idea of it. It's the idea of being haunted by your past. I will give it grace because of what Final Destination did this year. Because Final Destination was a franchise that I kind of fell off a long time ago, but came back this year and I actually had a really good time with it and had a lot of fun with it. So if they're able to even capture 70% of what Final Destination was able to do for that particular franchise in this one and just give it a little bit of new life and, new energy, then yeah, I'm all for it. I'm on board with seeing how it plays out. But I've also seen things like Ghostbusters Afterlife and other movies like that where they get it completely wrong. But in this particular instance, I don't think it has some of the same trappings as those franchises. I mean, it was quite successful, especially for its budget. It was like super successful, but it's not kind of tied to an idea that they kind of like lost with some of these franchises, or it's not tied to, it's just not tied to, pop culture images, essentially. It's more tied to the idea of this is the premise of you did something last summer and someone knows what you did and they're coming after you for it. And it's like, okay, tell me something a little bit interesting from that premise. Give me a little bit of a good story from that idea. And I'm keen to check it out. I'm keen to see, because like, I definitely feel like the new one has an opportunity to be better than what I just saw. And if it's not better than what I just saw, then they've completely wasted everyone's time. That's kind of how I feel about it, where I'm hopeful for it. And I feel like it's got the opportunity to do something really good. But I also know how some of these things play out in terms of it just being a cash grab and just using something that everyone knows to sell some tickets.
Legacy sequels have a really mixed track record, and I kind of want them to fail so that studios move on to the next thing. Like, I want a couple of them to really bomb, just to send a message. But there's been a few. If the new I Know What You Did Last Summer was coming out 5 years ago, if this was 2018-19, something like that, I would say, oh, this has got to be a garbage fire. Like, there's no way this is any good. And now it's more like a coin flip. It might be terrible, or somebody might have had an idea. And just in the last few months, we've had Final Destination, which I think got it right, and we've got Jurassic World, which got it wrong. And there's a real chance this might be something. And I really want them to just have an idea for a story and do that and do it competently. And that's all it really takes. It's not a complicated franchise. It's not a complicated premise. Just use it as a setup for a decent story. And I've done zero research, have an opinion about what it's going to be. I'm just going to watch it and see what it is. Like, I feel like this has more potential than it has delivered in the past. All it takes is for somebody to kind of just do like a reimagining almost, where somebody just takes the basic idea and theme and feel of it and kind of does something cool with it. And it's totally possible, and it remains to be seen whether somebody will do it.
All right, guys. I think with that, we've reached the end of today's episode. So if you reach this part of the episode, thank you very much for working with us. We always appreciate your support. If you liked what you heard today and you enjoyed our discussion, you should probably tell a friend. And if you hated our discussion and thought we were chatting a bunch of nonsense, well, we know what you did last summer. We are the Eye of the Storm podcast. See you later.
Bye-bye.